I love the sensation of speed. So I love the feeling of diving off the block, entering the water, particularly when you've peaked for an event and you've shaved and you just slip through the water like a hot knife through butter. So I love that sensation of speed. The start is the fastest point of the race because you're travelling through the air as opposed to through the water, so there's less resistance. So hold on a minute, if I can have a great start, then that's going to be a really good advantage. Good coach is a good thief, and that phrase always stuck with me, and he meant it tongue-in-cheek. Is it practice makes perfect? No, it's perfect practice makes perfect. So it's that repetition of doing the right thing every day. I've got to do it even better because I've got to assume they're doing more than what I'm doing, so I've got to do it even better than what they might be doing. What else can I be doing? There was no money in swimming as well, that was the other thing. So and the funding wasn't that high as well, that was the other thing. But you're not going to be able to buy a house or buy a car or run a car or kind of live. So and that's the thing, swimming is a full-time commitment in terms of the hours that are expected or that are required.
Greg, welcome to the show.
Ryan, great to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. Appreciate it.
Absolutely brilliant. As I think, as always, when I get guests on the show, there's always this interesting story that goes through. Very rarely is it one that has athlete, then stops, and then comes back to athlete again. So I quite like this sort of camel approach that you're going to be able to give us today.
Look, it's interesting. So you're alluding to the fact that I came back to the sport a few years ago, so maybe 10 years, I think, after hanging out the goggles.
Yeah.
And it was always something I didn't think I would do. Swimming's very much from speaking to a number of swimmers who swim at a similar level to me. So I was privileged enough to swim internationally and swim for my country. But I don't think it's actually that uncommon that you then go cold turkey and then stop, which I absolutely did. Mm-hmm. And yet probably didn't look at a pool for another 10 years, but then then came back to it in about 2013 with a pregnant wife at the time. We now have 3 children, so it was probably an interesting time to come back to the sports, but and then probably had another pretty good go for about another 7 years or so.
Yeah. No, and that's good, and I'm keen as we will sort of delve into that. Definitely, for many who are, I guess, tuning in and they're going to be thinking, all right, well, who is this chap? Let's have the conversation. Just give us a brief intro or infomercial, as I like to say, about what you're up to nowadays. Professionally, what goes on in your world.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm GM of customer engagement for a tech business in the banking sector. So we're one of Australia's leading tech businesses. So we're a software as a solution business. We're called Loanworks, and we provide loan origination software and commission software for the lending industry. So banks, non-banks, regionals, mutuals, credit unions, and aggregators. It's an exciting part of the industry to be in. I've always been in, for the last 23 or so years, the banking industry in some capacity or another, either on the banking side itself or working with the banks. So, something I feel like I've got a degree of subject matter expertise in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how long have you been, so you say you're in that industry, was there anything that attracted you to that industry in the first place?
I think I always knew I would go into, always knew I'd go into the financial services industry, maybe from a teenager, maybe it goes back further than that. So both of my parents, funnily enough, were in the banking industry or banking and financial services industry. My father on the more on the insurance side. My mother actually worked for the Bank of England many years ago, and then left, had kids, and then when she came back into work, it was as a swimming coach and swimming teacher. Right. So both of my parents were very influential for different ways on my career and my swimming career. Look, I think the part of getting into financial services was, I think, out of interest. And the books I read, the courses I took at A levels and then in my degree, and possibly even the films I watched.
Yeah.
But I think part of it was intrinsic. So I think because Dad, when I was a very young kid, the bits that I saw were that he, you know, and he didn't. Both my parents, in fact, didn't come from a privileged background, you know, whatsoever. Complete opposite, if anything. But he always looked immaculate, had amazing, you know, suits, had this air of authority and presence about him. Drove, you know, company cars, which I just thought was amazing as a kid. What you get a car. Ended up working all over the world in his career, and we would, as very young kids, my sister and I would go to his office. So he was based in Portsmouth at one point of his career, where I'm from. And in the 80s, Portsmouth had about 3 skyscrapers, if that, and he was in one of them. So that really impressed me. And we go and gate crash his office in the evening, and you know, catch the tail end of the day, and he'd be there, and so this is me looking through, you know, a 48-year-old father of 3's eyes. I didn't quite figure it out at the time, but you know, I looking back on it impressed me that you know, he had this air of presence and authority about him, and you could see that from the way people interacted with him. But they also really liked him, and they'd be laughing at him and with him, and he just had this great rapport with them. So I think that sort of struck me, and you know, my sister and I would run around the office and order drinks from the free vending machine. That was the bit that we thought was fascinating. So I think there were some intrinsic reasons where I kind of thought, I think I want to do what he does. And then as I got a bit older and as a teenager, sort of then understood what he does, and was like, okay, that sounds quite interesting. So I think part of it's intrinsic and maybe the influence of him, and part of it is I was interested in.
Yeah. Oh, look, you know, it is really interesting, you know, listening to you share that story, because so often, without realizing, we're influenced by those around us. We're influenced by who we grow up with. And whilst there's nearly always a pull, at least initially, to say, well, I'm not doing what they did, what my parents did, that's just boring. There's always this, you know, there's this influence that comes through. So it is fascinating just hearing you. It's like, well, maybe I was always destined to just kind of fall into it. But it is interesting about, you know, it's the way your dad behaved, the way he dressed, the way he went out, and there was things that you perhaps picked up as a kid that you weren't aware of.
Look, absolutely, and again, look, I'm looking at this now through a different lens, but it sort of struck me. It's like, well, hold on, he's kind of, he didn't use these words, but you know, he was the boss, right?
Yeah.
So, but yet everyone really liked him. I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. So that part, so I could pick up that he had this authority and this presence about him, but he wasn't, wasn't hierarchical with his people. You know, he believed that it's about engagement, it's about culture, and you know, he wanted to get the best out of his teams and his business unit. So I think so now that I'm in a leadership role and I've been in leadership roles, it's like, right, okay, that makes sense. It didn't make sense to me at 9.
No.
But, you know, piecing it together now from memories, it's like, okay. And look, and I think that would be, you know, exemplified at his funeral last year. So he, passed away at the age of 84. So the fact that he had people who he worked with, which is probably already 30 years ago now, at his funeral, and who would come up and sharing those stories, I was like, well, what a great story, and what a great reflection of how he led his teams.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're quite right. That is often, as we say, as AI says, a testament to his life. Your mum, on the other hand, you talked there from, as she came back into her sort of second wind, into her next career, was in swimming. For you then, gets us now to sort of your emerging story. What was sport like for you then as a child?
So I think so mum was a swimming teacher, swim coach. So we were always in a pool, my sister and I, from a very early age, and involved with a club from a not very early age, but probably under 10s or something like that. And my two sports when I was growing up were swimming and football, and loved both of them, still do. And so I started competing at maybe under 11s, let's say, in actually probably in both. But I never fully sort of ramped up my swimming training until much later. And so...
What does much later mean?
Probably 14, 15, which is
Right.
probably quite late, I guess, for a competitive swimmer. And I think both parents were quite keen to just let us, they never told us this, but I'm sort of figuring it out retrospectively, because we're now, my wife and I are doing this with our children as well. They didn't try and push us down one pathway, which, you know, some other parents did, because I think they wanted us to actually want to be doing what we're doing, as opposed to sort of being forced to do it. But again, going back to the influencing factors. So I mean, my mum actually, there was this really unique point in my sort of teenage years where I had started to ramp up my training. So I was doing early morning training and ramping up with the club and starting to kind of make some breaks on the county level, Southern County, and the national level. My sister was competing as well, and then my mum had started competing again at Masters. So again, looking back on that now, I go, yeah, that obviously an influencing factor that, you know, I'm a teenager, my mum is in her 50s, late 50s, and she's racing, you know. So, you know, I think setting examples to your kids is obviously really important, and that's a great way to do it through your behaviours and how you act. And but yeah, look, I think sport growing up, we were just always doing stuff. So it was, again, for me, it's mainly swimming and football. But yeah, it was what I'd say an active childhood.
Right. So. Yeah. And what was that balance like for you with that active sporting childhood and doing schoolwork?
It was. It's funny. I probably became more studious and scholastic, I think, as I grew up. So I think by the time I was at uni, it's probably when I was, I was like, okay, now I'm actually, I'm embracing this. That's probably the right order to do it in, I guess. I think when I was at school, I was decent. I was best in the class, wasn't the worst in the class, probably. Yeah.
So, I mean, and I asked the question because often when we've got this sporting, very active sporting wise, that becomes a really strong pull away to say, right, well, I need to put my everything into that. So perhaps a slightly different way, at what point did you realise you were good at swimming?
Probably not until, I mean, there is actually an epiphany moment, but there were moments leading up to it. So look, and you've had swimmers on here who've had, far greater trophy cabinets than I can claim to have. But look, I think in terms of my achievements as a swimmer, so I swam internationally, I swam for my country, I won nationals 3 times in the UK. But
there must have been a point before swimming nationals, before winning at nationals.
Oh, there was lots of
that
failures.
You realised. Well, but I suppose I'm interested. The point in which you realised, hold on, I'm not just going to do my 1 hour swimming lesson a week. I'm going to compete. Actually, I'm not just going to compete on the Friday night local gala. There's more that I can do here.
Yeah.
How did you realise that moment?
It was probably a combination of a couple of things. So I initially, because I was probably splitting my time equally between swimming and football. I think at one point, I was playing for 2 football teams, 2 football trainings, etc. And I hadn't quite joined the dots to understand that if I train more at swimming, then I will then be faster in the race. So I'm talking quite young, so this is probably 11, 12. So because I was doing 1 to 2 sessions a week or whatever, there's a limit to how you're going to perform on 1 to 2 sessions a week. So I was very active because I was then doing football 3 or 4 times a week, let's say. But I hadn't joined the dots to go, right, the 100 metres butterfly when I race is going to be less painful if I've done 10 sessions versus if I've done 2. So I probably went through a lot of hard lessons and failures in turning up to, and so my event, or one of my events was the 100 butterfly, turning up to swim meets, and the 100 butterfly is a tough event even when you're training multiple 20 plus hours a week. So if you're training 2 hours a week, it's an even tougher event. So I went through a few events where I would be absolutely dying on the last length of the race, coming in 10 meters behind people, and then sort of not really I mean, hindsight's a great thing. I don't know if this realization happened quickly or took ages, but not kind of making the connection that if you train more, that's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen as badly. So I must have had a few years of that, because I started ramping up at about probably 14, and then at about 15, because I was still at school. I think it was my last year at school. We went on a school skiing trip, and so but leading up to that, I'd started to ramp up. So I was and started to perform better in the pool and stuff.
Yeah.
But still doing the other stuff, still doing the football. And went to school skiing trip, didn't touch the water for a week. Had a 24-hour coach journey back from Austria to Portsmouth via the I think Le Havre to Portsmouth ferry or something like that. The next day was county championships, and I was swimming the 100 free, and I've woken up that morning and I was just like, I'm totally exhausted from sitting on a coach. Don't want to go. Yeah, my mum said, look, you've got to go. I'm thinking, well, I've had a week off, but Anyway, rocked up to the county championships, which was Southampton. Swam the 100 free, made the final. Didn't win it, but I think I came fourth or something like that. But blew my previous time out of the water by about 4 seconds or something ridiculous like that. Now, so I hadn't really made an impact on the county level, but that was the epiphany moment where I thought, well, hold on a minute, if I can do that after 24 hours on a coach and after a week of not swimming, maybe I should actually start to take this sport more seriously. And that was probably my light bulb moment. And then pretty much from there, that was it. I was then like, right, this is the sport I'm going to focus on. So I think I was probably actually 15 coming on 16, because I think it was my last year at school. And from then on, it was then just swimming.
Right.
And
so at that time, I mean, that's amazing. And things don't always lead to an epiphany moment, but you recognize at that point, well, hey, there's talent. The scoreboard is telling you there's some talent there, and you put everything in. What would you say changed then? What changed in your either behaviour or at least what you thought you might be able to achieve in swimming?
So that would have been, so if I was 16, what would that be? 92. Yeah. So from that point, literally that point on, I was like, right, I think I can actually be half decent at this. Look, I've always thought, I don't know how I feel about natural talent. So if there is such a thing as natural talent, I don't think I necessarily had it for swimming. And a coach of mine in the US said, look, forget natural talent. He said, attitude beats natural talent every time. Now, he told me that probably 8 years after that. But when he said that, I was like, yeah, that really resonates with me, because that's kind of how I'd never actually kind of put it in those terms. That's kind of how I'd always sort of felt. I kind of always felt, I think if you just, make sacrifices, work hard, show some tenacity, show some, Portsmouth never say die attitude kind of thing, then I think you can kind of be good at whatever you put your mind to. So I thought, I think I might be half decent at this. Right. So from that moment on, I look. So that was 92. It was probably then another 3 years before I went to the US. So I just put my head down and ramped up the training.
Well, that idea of going to the US, what made you think? So you're a swimmer in Portsmouth. What gave you then this view on, well, the US is a natural place for me to go to continue to improve?
So at the time, it's pre-lottery funding days. It was still very much a young person's sport. Yeah. So you would be lucky to find any, too many swimmers in their mid-20s in sort of 1992. So it's pretty much if you swam at university age, then you were probably doing it whilst attending university, but it wasn't necessarily a dedicated program within that university,
right. And it wasn't a funded thing for yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought, look, so what we were starting to see is swimmers going to the US and then coming back and swimming at nationals and shooting the lights out. And I thought, okay, could that be an option for me? So started doing some investigating and. Ended up. It was through. It was actually I got put onto a coach in the US by, again, name dropping, the BBC commentator Andy Jameson, who Olympic medalist, former European record holder, still a commentator now for the BBC. And I attended a swim clinic with him around about that time. And he just put me on to a coach in the US called Neil Harper. Reached out to Neil Harper, I'm still in contact with today. And he put me in touch with some coaches over there, and that's kind of how it all started. Right. But look, the best and the most also equally the most challenging thing about swimming is it's very black and white. So it's not like football where it's subjective, it's a game of opinions. Swimming's black or white. You've either won the race or you haven't. You've either touched in front of someone or you haven't. Your time is either 46.9 seconds or it's 47.0. It's not like, well, you're a better swimmer than that person. It's, well, if you're faster, then technically you're better. We'll each have an opinion on, who the best football team is. You'll possibly say it's Leeds United. I will, of course, say it's Portsmouth.
Wow,
but
we should end this conversation now.
So really, any selection, if you like, for a US university, it's great because it's based on time.
Yeah.
So if they're looking for a 50 freestyle, 100 freestyler, and these are your times, and they want to recruit you, they've got tangible evidence to go, we can bring them in. So
for that move to the US, what connections did you have on the ground in the US? How did you know where to go? So
that was probably off the back of that, the Andy Jameson referral. So put me in touch with Neil Harper, who's now, I think he's at Florida State or Arkansas. He connected me with North Carolina State, started the conversations there. Look, this is all pre-YouTube. It was pre-internet, so it's not like they could Google me and say, right, what was his time at Nationals last year? But there was a degree of research on me and who is this guy and what and it was good timing because I think that year was the first year I won Nationals. So that was a tangible thing. They could say, okay, well, this is who he is.
And so, I know we're talking back then, but winning Nationals is pretty big.
It is, and it's still, I think, probably one of my fondest memories.
Yeah. I love the way you act like it's nothing. It's like, I was just the fastest swimmer in the country.
Look, it's again very, very cognizant of. Look, there are others who have achieved way more in the sport. I'm not claiming to be a Michael Phelps. I think for my, I think I did okay. I think I did okay. I think. I like I say, so I was fortunate enough to win Nationals 3 times the 50 fly. Yeah. Won Nationals in the US on the 4x100 freestyle relay. When I was at University of Hawaii. When I was at University of Hawaii, we broke the American record for the 4x50 freestyle relay. Wow. Yeah. And I think one of my equally one of my fondest achievements was probably getting a bronze medal at the FINA World Cup in 2001 at Sheffield. FINA now World Aquatics, and because at the time that field was pretty heavily stacked as well. So I was up against the world record holder at the time for the 100 and 200 fly, Denis Pankratov from Russia. So it was a decent field. It wasn't that no one showed up. But there is a big but to this. I'd like to think I got the best out of my quote unquote talent and capability, and I think. How
do you think you did that? You gave the quote which you got whilst you were over in the US, which I guess is during this time of those achievements. The attitude is better than this natural talent or beats natural talent. So for you talk about that attitude. What do you think you did as a swimmer to get to that pinnacle, to achieve that bronze, to achieve those national championships?
So I think I figured out that there's a lot to a sprint race for a start. So my races were the 50 and the 100 freestyle and butterfly. So there's a lot that has to go right, and I figured out I can either look at a time and say, right, I need to just get that time, and I'm just going to focus on that time. That's the wrong way to go about it. It's about focusing on the process, and this is why I love the parallels between what it is as a swimmer and what I can use in a leadership capacity in my role. Focus on the process. So it's around, well, firstly, is it practice makes perfect? No, it's perfect practice makes perfect. So it's that repetition of doing the right thing every day, or every session, so multiple sessions a day.
Yes.
So doing the right thing over and over and over and over again in training, so that on race day it just becomes second nature, that that you don't have to think about it, because there is no time to think about it on a sprint. Then I figured out, well, there's different components to a race that you can focus on, especially as a sprinter. So there's the start. So the start is the fastest point of the race, because you're traveling through the air as opposed to through the water, so there's less resistance. So hold on a minute, if I can have a great start, then that's going to be a really good advantage. Now, don't get me wrong, when you're swimming internationally, everyone's got a great start. Everyone trains a lot. Everyone has got natural explosive speed. Everyone's got great endurance. So it's not just a case of, if I focus on myself. No, I want to have the best reactions and the best start and the best height off the dive, the best angle of entry, the best underwater streamline position, the best underwater kicks. So I tried to sort of break it down into what are the things that I can work on. So I know that in a World Cup final or a Olympic trials final, everyone is going to be fit, strong, explosive, great endurance. So what are the things that I can work on outside of that don't actually take more time, and don't actually necessarily, take more energy? It's just concentration, it's just focus, and it's just doing that. I think it's that mentality of just trying to do all of the right things all of the time.
Yeah.
So there's no, if you do this, if you react quicker, then you're going to have you're going to get off the box quicker, so you're going to win the race. No, it's doing all of the right things all of the time, just trying to have that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, fascinating as you break that down, really, because you're talking about...
That's just the start.
Yeah, that's the start. Well, that's the thing. It's you're talking about, there's a process, you're following that process. You've then, actually, obvious as you say it, but excuse me, I've never thought about, that is the fastest point in the race. So you're talking about breaking down a race in which it goes so quickly that, as you said, you don't really think about it whilst you're doing it, which means it's all the prep ahead of the race that you have to do, breaking it down into those one pieces. And the bit that gets you to that next level is the concentration level, the mental endurance to be able to keep it up, to be able to do it repetitively, so it comes out perfect.
Yeah. It's again, it's a case of my assumption going into when I got to a certain point in my career that everyone is doing that. So then it's like I've got to do it even better, because I've got to assume they're doing more than what I'm doing. So I've got to do it even better than what they might be doing. What else can I be doing that's going to give me a legal edge? What can I be working on? And what can I be doing out of the water? What can I be doing? And because we're talking fine margins, of course. So we're talking, a hundredth of a second is the difference between a medal and no medal. Tenth of a second is the difference between first and maybe eighth. So we're talking very, very fine margins. So even things like and this was also relevant when I came back to the sport. Probably more so because I didn't have the opportunity to train as much. So that's when then the nutrition side comes into it, the sleep, all the things that you can control but that aren't necessarily training related.
Right. I mean, going through that, you gave a few hints in winning nationals, going back over to the US, finishing college, doing those types of things. At what point did you come to a realization that, well, this level of swimming is going to have to stop, I'm going to have to do something else? When did you think my elite career is over?
Again, this is looking through my lens now, but I think I thought this at the time as well. So I sort of felt that because I sort of started the journey quite late, I always felt like, okay, I'm sort of coming towards the end, because there weren't too many swimmers in their mid-20s when I was in my early 20s. So I was sort of thinking I've probably got a couple more years of this, and being in America, so 2 years at North Carolina State, and then I transferred to University of Hawaii. So in Hawaii, by the time I was in Hawaii, I sort of knew, all right, I may have a year or two after I leave Hawaii, but possibly it may just be I leave Hawaii and that's it. Then I'm done. So I think that probably created a sense of urgency to a point as well. You know, making sure that you absolutely make the most of this, and making sure that, you know, because this could be your last season kind of thing. So I think there was a bit of that approach. But I sort of felt that, look, this probably won't last forever, because not many people who, you know, it's actually quite common now for swimmers to go on to their, you know, into their 30s, for example. It definitely wasn't back then. That's what are we talking, 2000s, let's say early 2000s. So I would have been thinking about the transition in Hawaii, but with the view, I want to try and keep this going for as long as makes sense, and for as long as I'm improving and you know, representing my country and hopefully winning stuff and, you know, getting faster. But I would have been thinking about, you know, about the what next, probably from 2 years out, maybe. I think, because at the time there was no money in swimming as well. That was the other thing. So by the time I finished, lottery funding was just about come in, but the criteria was understandably, you know, strict, and the funding wasn't that high as well. That was the other thing. So I think to get about 10 grand a year or something, you probably need to be top 8 in the world, and so the kind of incentive was, well, okay, that's great. I mean, any money's good if you know, if you're a swimmer not getting paid, but you're not going to be able to buy a house or buy a car or run a car or kind of live. So and that's the thing. Swimming is a full-time commitment in terms of the hours that are expected or that are required. So so I think I kind of knew that, okay, there has to be a plan B. So I was probably thinking about it from a 2 or 3 years out, I think. So.
So, I'm interested then. What did you do? So you thought about it 2 years out. Did you do anything to prepare for that or to make it happen?
So I think there would have been, you know, career conversations with people at the university at the time when I was at University of Hawaii.
Do you actually remember them, or it's like, I probably did have them?
There's probably one that stuck out, where the counsellor said, it was something along the lines of, you know, if you thought about what you want to do, and I probably would have said something about financial services because of, you know, my dad, and he sort of said, well, you know, because you know you're a swimmer and you probably want to be you know, utilising the fact that you know you're competitive and being in an environment where, you know, the harder you work, then, you know, you can be rewarded for that, and it allowed me to sort of just. It probably didn't really influence me, but it allowed me to just put a bit of framework around, okay, I need to, what can I be doing where I'm going to be utilising maybe some of the same skills that you know, and take those from the pool to my career. The funny thing is now I've probably got a different view now, because I think that the skills that elite sport gives you are actually applicable to anything in life. It doesn't have to be financial services. Doesn't have to be a leadership role. It's basically, look, I think the relevant skills that I took from swimming are that if you show some tenacity, if you're prepared to make sacrifice, and, you know, if you've got a great attitude, then those are skills that are relevant in any role and in your personal relationships and as a parent. So those are, but really important, I think, to just always anchor back to. So I don't know whether swimming gave me that or whether I had that and swimming enhanced it. Possibly a combination of both. Well, I think it is a combination of both. I know one of the guests I had previously spoke about your environment forces certain genes or at least behaviours to come alive, and, you know, that environment of sport at an early age means that your body sort of gets used to this. It's like, wow, hold on, I'm competing every day. I need to concentrate every day, and perhaps to a level that your average 12-year-old, your average 18-year-old, 21-year-old hasn't had time to do, because of the number of experiences that you have. So I'm interested then, well, actually before that, how seriously did you take the degree that you were doing or the studies in the US? There was always a part of me that thought, look, probably wrongly, but, you know, is anyone going to care about this? If I'm working in the UK, is any future employer going to look at the fact that I've got a degree from a US university? And so there was an element of that, but then there was there were many elements of it that I really enjoyed, because regardless of your major, you could actually, and my major was exercise physiology, for example.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of other classes that weren't related to your major that you can take. So I ended up taking a lot of economics related classes.
Right. Okay.
Which hence when I said that, that part of the classes I was taking at university kind of formed where I think, or informed where I ended up starting my career. So yeah, I think that variety probably actually helped me. Actually, it probably helped it keep it fresh and interesting for me, and in a way that I'm still learning and growing, but in sort of maybe multiple areas and disciplines.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's always, when we're there, a lot of scholarship athletes or athletes there for sport. The academic piece is like, that is cool. We'll get to that.
Well, but it's funny you say that, because because you are on scholarship. I mean, the coach kind of owns you. And it was more, less so in Hawaii, but our coach in North Carolina State was very keen to remind everyone of that. And if people, and he'd get reports on everyone's grades.
Yes.
And everything over there is, which is very different to the UK, but it's your grade point average. So I think broadly speaking, it's the number of hours that you're doing, overlaid by your grade, overlaid by maybe that's it. And so basically, grade point average of 4 is A averages across all your classes, etc. So he'd get these reports, and if people weren't performing in their classes, he'd be coming down on them and making them do study hall after
really
training
good.
in the evening and stuff like that. You know? So yeah. And there was always that threat that you could have your scholarship pulled if you weren't towing the line.
Yeah,
so.
Very true. No, that's positive. That sort of approach. I think it's good to hear. So for you then, coming out of swimming, chapter 1, what did you do?
So I did. So coming out of it was actually quite. Maybe painful is the wrong word, but it was. It wasn't easy. So I'd not long swum at the World Cups at Sheffield and then Berlin.
Yeah.
That was very soon after that. And what was going through my mind, and I was back in the UK at the time, knowing that I had another year in Hawaii as like an extension of my student visa, where you can basically work for another year. So I thought, well, I'd be stupid not to do that. So I knew that I could go back and work over there. So I knew that I was going to be going back, but I thought, well, look, the visa hadn't come through, so there was this kind of period of 2 to 3 months. So I was still sort of training, and it really dawned on me at the time, because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I won't go back. Maybe I'll stay here. The club I was training with, Portsmouth North Sea, an elite club. The head coach there at the time, elite coach, multiple Olympians, multiple world record holders he produced. He's now over here, and our paths have since crossed again, which has been fantastic. And I was thinking, well, so the point being, the level of commitment to train with that team was high, and I was doing that thinking, this is great, but how? If I was to do this and for another year or two, how do I fund it? It doesn't really allow me to work. I'm not making any money from doing it, even though I've just swum for my country. So, and I'm not going to be in a position to buy a house or buy a car or anything like that. How am I going to do this? There's probably a window of maybe 4 or 5 hours during the day where I could work. Well, what am I going to do that's going to allow me to fund a lifestyle and train? So that process was going on in my mind. So I think it was probably going on in my mind prior to the World Cup as well. So long story short, I made the hard decision to speak to my coach at the time, Chris Nesbitt at Portsmouth, and I just said, oh look, I think this is it. And that was, it's hard to tell him, hard for a couple of reasons. One, because he put a lot of time and energy into my development, and he's quite an intimidating character as well. So to tell him that was it was tough, because it then saying it out loud was like, oh, this is it. I'm done. So that part was like, he was great about it, by the way. He said, look, you've made a decision based on a life decision. You haven't made an emotional decision or a swimming decision. He said, I can tell you've thought this through, and it's a tough decision for you, and it was. Shortly after that, this is the glamorous part, actually. I went and got a job as a labourer because I knew that the visa was going to be coming through.
Yeah.
So I worked on a demolition site for I think 2 or 3 months to get some money before I went back to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And went back there, worked for a year because I had another.
What
year.
were you doing in Hawaii?
That was just in retail management. So
what does that mean?
At Abercrombie. So I was store manager at Abercrombie. For a year.
Retail management sounds way better, but you were at Abercrombie. Where in the 2000s. So this is still lights flashing, discotheque type
absolutely.
thing. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And I resumed my football activities, so that was good. So I joined a team which, as we all know, because you play over here. Generally, when you find a football team, half the team are Brits, as was the case here. So that was good. So I started playing football again, and then basically did a year of that to try and figure out. I knew that I wasn't going to be working in retail management. To figure out then, all right, I'm going to be going back to England, whatever it would have been, Feb next year. I knew by then, okay, I'm probably going to end up in financial services. What are the steps I need to take to make that happen? So it's probably a good 3 to 6 months of trying to get my resume out there, which at the time consisted of swimming. And just trying to metaphorically knock on doors to try and get some opportunities for when I came back.
Right. And so, if I, from my understanding, left swimming, went to the US, took a year, probably loving life, given the company and what it was like at that time. Played football, things were good. You made a decision then to come back to the UK or put those steps in, got the resume out, which effectively was a student with some good athletic aspirations that came on there. Interesting, as you look back at that resume, was it swimming? How did you lay it out? Because, there's a lot of people coming and they're like, I've just been an athlete. I've nothing else to put on there. What did you put on there?
I actually listened. So, yes, it was that. And so I'm thinking, well, how do I actually make this appealing to an employer? On the basis that I don't actually have, if I'm trying to get into financial services, I don't have any financial services background. So I was putting all summer jobs that I'd had on there, and looking back on it, I mean, very, very skinny. But then, and again, I was also conscious, and part of the reason why I hung up the goggles when I did is I was like, look, I don't want to be 28, 29 trying to start a career. So it was still quite late for me. I was still 20, 25, 26 maybe at this point, trying to get into financial services. So the CV was skinny. It was I was a swimmer and educated in the US, which hopefully shows something about you. Hopefully it shows that you've got some kind of get up and go about you and some tenacity, adaptability, and then a bunch of summer jobs. And a few work experiences at insurance companies as well. So the first role I got was so it was directly into financial services, but in broking, which.
Well, I'm interested. Getting that job, was that cold applications, boom, application, sit down, and that was it?
Basically, yeah. And in fairness, so I've said to you before, I've never. So there's no manual, is there? When you leave sport, there's no manual. So there's no textbook where you go, if you do this, this will happen. And I was very conscious to kind of not talk about swimming, because I thought I want to do this on merit, which is on reflection a stupid way to approach it, because it was a point of difference. And if I was speaking to someone now about a role and they were telling me they were a former international athlete, I'd be saying there's something about you, that's a really good point of difference towards it. So don't get me wrong, if people ask me, I'd talk about it, but I just wouldn't lead with it, which is probably okay, right? But I was just very conscious. I want to be selected on merit. One thing that I didn't do that I would definitely do now is, I didn't really look. Not that I had any kind of relationships to leverage in the financial services world, but I didn't really reach out to anyone to say, look, can you put me in front of this person, or can you connect with this person? because I thought that's asking for a favour.
Yeah.
I thought, whereas now I'd be saying, no, just build your networks. Just ask for a coffee with someone. You don't have to ask them for a job, but ask them for a coffee and just try and build your networks that way. And it's about having that coffee meeting, which doesn't necessarily need to lead to a sale or to an interview, but it's just you're building your networks and trying to build your brand, if you like.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting to listen to you there, because you talk about talent versus attitude, and there was something in you that got you to the level at swimming, national champ, got you then thinking about getting roles or applying for jobs, and it was all attitude. You actually shunned, in some respects, the talent that made you a national champion, right? And did it attitude. No, I can do this based on me. Don't need to reach out to anyone else. Off we go.
Yeah, and I think it was probably part of my mindset at the time as well of going cold turkey from swimming. So again, when I had that conversation with Chris and said this is it, I was like, I couldn't even watch swimming on the TV because it was again, I don't want to say painful, but it made me miss it so much, and I knew that there was kind of nothing I could do about it, because I'd made a sensible decision. I hadn't made an emotional decision. I made a sensible decision, which is, if you want to build a career, you want to have a house, you want to have a car, you want to be able to set yourself up, you have to do this. So I thought, why do I want to watch Olympic trials or the Olympics and go, I'd love to be out there.
Yeah. So look, you entered the financial services world in the UK, turned your back on swimming. Let's fast forward. Where were you? What happened for you to think, swimming?
I'll come back to it. Yeah.
Hi, it's Ryan Gonsalves here. Thanks for tuning in today. I just want to take a moment to ask you an important favor. To help grow this channel, one thing will do that above more than anything else. Please hit that subscribe button. By hitting that subscribe button, you help me to grow the channel, allowing me to create more tailored content, improving the quality, and also to develop additional services such as the workshops, one-on-one sessions specifically designed to support elite athletes in that difficult transition to that career beyond sport. So if you want to join me on this journey to help inspire, guide, and connect individuals to find their second wind, please hit that subscribe button.
Fast forward probably 10 years, so it would have been end of 2012, So I was by now over here.
Over here, being you moved to Sydney?
Sydney, yeah. And obviously there's another story in there for anyone that's ever interested in the follow-up session that we'll do of how I got to Sydney. But yeah, so I came back to the sport in end of 2012. And during that time, to my point earlier, I'd resumed my footballing endeavours, not anywhere at the level you're at, mate. So I won't try and compare myself. But I was playing, and one of the first things that I did when I came to Australia was find a football team. Again, I don't think is uncommon, is it, for Brits? So I found a team, started playing again. So I played for a good sort of 2 or 3 years, and then I was lifting weights, I was running. Met my girlfriend, who became my fiance, who's now my wife and mother of 3 children, and yeah, we had this life where we were both in the similar industry, both doing sports and stuff. But I kind of just felt that I couldn't quite figure it. It took me ages to figure it out. And another story is I even had an amateur boxing fight in the UK before I left. So again, and so I put all these things together. And that was a great process to go through the whole training, and I applied the swimming mindset to that, and cutting weight, all that kind of stuff. And I got to a point in about 2012.
Actually, hold on. This boxing bit is completely new.
Sorry,
you've derailed the whole conversation. So just where did that come in?
It came from, and it's probably what eventually got me back into swimming, because I was at Clydesdale Bank in the UK at the time, and I was playing football, and I thought, you know what, I missed the performance side. So playing football it's a game, it's a team event, but I could, it didn't force, or I didn't feel like it felt me. I didn't feel like it forced me to stay in shape. I felt like if I could, I'll do training once a week, lift or run or whatever, and then play at the weekend. But if I was feeling a bit tired during the game, I just wouldn't run as much. So I thought, I think I need something that's, that's going to really focus me, that I know I have to train for.
Okay.
Because if I don't train, I could get seriously injured. So
you'll get hit.
Now, my father, despite being an executive in the insurance industry, boxed at university in India. My grandfather on my mum's side was an ex-professional boxer. Get this, for the council in southeast London. So the council paid him to box.
Okay.
Jack the blonde bombshell Doyle. So I kind of, because I knew about each of them, I kind of thought, I've got to do this at some point. So this point came, I was like, I need something to really focus on mine. So to train on, to focus my training. So I thought, right, I'll do this. So I started training with the University of Portsmouth Boxing Club, and they were mainly students, but anyone could box there because they were a registered ABC. So started training. After a few months, the coach said, I've got your fight. And then that fight happened to be about a month before, no, not even a month, probably 2 weeks before I got on the plane for Australia. So had the fight. It was a brilliant experience to go through. I was basically fighting Ivan Drago from Rocky IV. It was because I was heavyweight, so I was. So I'm 6'2". I think I've mentioned you once before. I'm probably a bit too short for a sprint swimmer. I think most of the sprint swimmers are at 6'4" or above, and this guy would have been about 6'5".
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get near him because of his reach. But yeah, and we were the home team, so it was at University of Portsmouth in their nightclub, 400 people there. 399 of them all supporting there were 12 fighters on the card, with raucous support from students and friends and family and my football team, and entrance music as you walk out.
You like the spectacle. It's not just the performance, it's the spectacle.
And I think it's the fear that the going in there going, I've got to turn up prepared.
Yes.
I've got to turn up having done the work. I've got to turn up having made the weight, all these kinds of things. And then, walking out there and to the my entrance music was Fire Started by the Prodigy, and really getting the and under the lights and everything. So it was awesome. Fantastic.
So I have to ask the outcome.
I did knock him out. So
okay. Oh, knockout, not just points. Wow. Okay.
With a punch after the fight, the coach said to me, "I told you to just jab, straight shots, and this was a left hook." Yeah.
Fantastic.
Which came out. Yeah.
So again, this theme, it's that sharpened edge. It's that need for competition, but you can't just coast.
Yeah, exactly. So what really got me back, I got to so again, my wife and I we were doing sports, and I was still playing football, but I thought it's the competition part I miss. Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to swim 10 times a week. So what else can I do where I can compete? So I joined very briefly a running club, a track club, and trained for 100 metres, and did about a month of that. Did my first race, and I just remember the night before, I just loved going through the process, because I was just trying to replicate the process that I did when I was swimming, which was, you have your good meal, you stretch the night before, and you're going through the race plan, going through the race strategy, get up in the morning, have a little light run, have another stretch, and it just reminded me of, oh my God, I just love this process. Did the race, okay, it was a masters race, I don't know, about fourth in my race or something like that. But the time was actually not too bad. From memory, was it about high 11s or something like that? I remember thinking, that's not too bad. And then sort of it was just on my mind for the rest of the day, and went out to dinner with Erin, my wife, that night, and I just said, I just really love that, and I just love going through the process. And literally the next day, I was like, why am I bothering with running and trying to make myself into a runner? So I found a swim club. I was just like, I need to get back into swimming. What am I doing? Yeah. Stumbled upon, just through local geographical convenience, Carlisle, as in the world famous swimming organisation founded by Forbes and Ursula Carlisle, and joined their masters team, and started swimming masters. Did a few months of that, And it was like being an age grouper again, because I was coming off such a low, but 10 years out of the water.
Yeah.
So it was like starting from scratch again. And started competing about 2 or 3 months after that, obviously with the expectation that first race I'm going to be, back at my old times from 10 years ago, which wasn't the case, but it was actually quite good.
Yeah.
Then went to Masters Nationals. I think won 3 events there or something in my age group, and then thought, okay. And then the times were starting to come down. So it's like being an age grouper again, where when you're 12, every time you swim, it's a PB sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the coach who was coaching me for the Masters guys said, you should maybe go and speak to the national squad, the Carlisle national squad. Go and speak to Justin Rothwell, who's still a friend now. He said we should try and get you training over there. And I thought, that sounds like a good idea. I should go from 4 hours a week to I probably didn't get as high as 10, but I got up to about 8 or 9 hours a week. So,
but I mean, with this, so you talk about it being like being an age grouper again, where you're getting PBs, everything. How did that start to motivate you?
So the thrill of getting faster each time was just. I thought it's not going to be a thrill because I'm still going to be off my times from 10 years ago. Then I started to realize, and I had the benchmark of that first time in the 100 free or whatever, and thinking, okay, that was pretty bad. But then the next race was quicker. I was like, okay. Yeah. So it was like, I was thinking, this is a different kind of thrill, because I'm way off where I was 10 years ago, but I'm getting faster. So that, and again, I spoke about earlier about breaking down the race, right, into the different components. I could probably break down racing itself in terms of what it means to me as well, as an extension of that. So I like, people talk about, I love winning. I love the sensation of speed. So I love the feeling of diving off the block, entering the water, particularly when you've peaked for an event and you've shaved and you just slip through the water like a hot knife through butter. So I love that sensation of speed, of your underwater kicks and popping up to the surface with a strong breakout stroke, bombing down the first length of the pool, bouncing off the tip. So I love that feeling of speed. So yes, I love touching the wall in front of other people as well. I love hitting certain times, but the thrill of the speed is a big part of it for me as well. And depending on how deep we want to get into this, I like jumping out of planes and pulling the parachute cord, and I like bungee jumping. So I don't know, maybe there's something in there like that. I won't talk about driving the car fast because that would be inappropriate and illegal. But so I think that's part of it as well. It was a thrill that I wasn't expecting, because I was thinking, if I'm not going to be anywhere near my times from 10 years ago, what's the point? But then I started to chip away, and then the Masters coach said, you should maybe speak to the... he said, I'll speak to them for you, give you an intro. Yeah. And in the end, I sort of didn't need an intro, because he said, you should swim at that event, which is an open event, not a Masters event. And the coach...
What do you mean by open versus Masters?
So all age groups. So basically the younger guys, so the guys in their sort of 20s, as opposed to Masters where you're in your 25 to 29 age group, or 30 to 35, etc. So I'm at an open event where I'd been told that the head coach of the Carlisle national squad would be there, and Brian, the coach of Masters, has said, Justin's going to be there. I'll tell him you're going to be there. He'll see you anyway. Go and have a chat, and maybe he'll tell you to come along and train with the national squad. So as luck would have it, I actually swam quite well in the, whatever it was, the 100 fly. I think I picked up a bronze at this event, and beat a few of the younger guys in that squad. So I stood out, partly because I swam all right, and partly because I was 15 years older than everyone else that was competing. So I was going to. So there's people looking at the start sheet going, probably a 2000 birthday, 76 birthday. Well, who's this guy? So off the back of that, met with Justin Rothwell. He said, look, come along and train with us. And so the Masters had gone better than I hoped, and then it just, I guess, gave me that door back into, I guess, swimming at an elite level as well. Yeah.
How did you balance that additional swim training or desire with a job? Yeah, so there's a couple of answers to that, and it's funny because it seems harder now because I'm not doing that now, although I'm still in the water now, but
in a different capacity, in a capacity I never thought I would be, i.e. just doing a couple of sessions a week. So at the time, there was probably that element of, I know this isn't going to last forever, so I'm just going to see how far I can take this.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave myself an arbitrary goal of, I want to try and get back to when I started swimming with Justin. Now, bearing in mind, I wasn't doing 20 hours a week, but I was just about scratching maybe 8 hours, let's say.
What does 8 hours look like in a week?
Yeah, so that would have been, all of their sessions were 2 hours. I generally couldn't do the 2 hours in the morning, for example, because I'd have to get out and go to work. So I'd do 5 till 6:30 in the morning. So be there at 4:45 to get up at 4:15. So 5 till 6:30.
Wow.
I think did I do 3 of those? Saturday morning was 2 hours, and I think I could scrape together maybe one evening. So it was about 7 or 8 hours a week.
And so what was your job at that time?
So similar to what I'm doing now, but how I managed to make it work was, so this is pre-kids. So Erin was pregnant with our eldest Lockie at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have to negotiate daycare drop-offs or school drop-offs, and no one in the financial services industry was working at 4:15, so it was kind of okay.
Yep.
So the mornings I could just about do. I'd cobble together one evening, and if I couldn't, it kind of didn't matter because I do the Sunday. So it was anywhere from, let's say, 6 to 8 hours a week, which, don't get me wrong, was still a struggle because I was still traveling with work as well.
Well, that's what I mean. So how did you make that? Did you need concessions from your boss? Leading a team? What were the expectations?
Believe it or not, it didn't, other than my exhaustion, it didn't really impact my day job. And if anything, it probably enhanced it because it gave me this fantastic change of gear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the moment, just the thought of that stresses me out. But at the time, it gave me this change of gear where when I was in the pool, all I was thinking about was the session.
Yeah.
Then when I was at work, I was like, I know what I've done this morning, and I feel empowered by that because I've put myself through. Well, for a start, I can turn up into any meeting or any scenario where I've been up for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm already fresh as a daisy. There's no kind of building into the day. I'm ready to go and hit the ground running. So I sort of used it as a way to empower me. It would get hard at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm sort of thinking I've nearly been up for 12 hours. But and look, on days where I was traveling interstate, that was a write-off for training.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I made it work, and it sort of then became the point of difference in client meetings, for example, or meetings internally that I'd probably figured out how to use that I hadn't figured out earlier in my career.
Right.
So I was using it in such a way that probably didn't sound like I was big noting myself, which is what I was always just conscious of. I don't want to talk about swimming like I've done this and I've done this. I never wanted to do that, but this allowed me to. People sort of knew about it, and then people would then say, "Oh, did you know that he's been up for 12 hours today?" And then the conversation would start, and it kind of became a nice little sort of point of difference with clients, I think. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting listening to you and the story, and sort of a strong theme that comes through this is, well, it is a humility. It's a humility about what you have achieved as an athlete. At some points, that humility almost is accidental because you just ignored it. It's like, it didn't even happen. It's not relevant whatsoever. Yeah. But it is being humble about what that success is. But it does seem like you've recognized the attitude it took to achieve that success. And that's what you've picked up and brought with you throughout your professional, your corporate career.
Yeah. And again, it seems a lot easier now, look, older, wiser, hopefully. And you start to then piece together the jigsaw a bit, and there's certain things that I can recall from like an odd thing or a random thing that a coach maybe said 20 years ago, which I'm now going, that I don't know whether that informed me or whether I'm just piecing it together now, and I go, right, after 23 years in the corporate world, I'm now just pretending that meant something and that it's kind of influenced me. I don't know. An example, one of our a coach of mine in University of Hawaii, in the first year I was there, he introduced that we were about to get into a set, and he introduced the set and said, "Oh, good coach is a good thief," and that phrase always stuck with me. And he meant it tongue in cheek. And what he was prefacing is we were just about to do a set that Alexander Popov had gone through that he'd read online or something, and Alexander Popov at the time was I think at the time he would have been the reigning Olympic champion for the 100 free, and he was the world record holder. So he was like, good coach is a good thief. We're going to do what Alex Popov did in the set the other day. And so we were all excited. We're like, oh yeah, we're going to do what Popov did. And but even that kind of casual phrase there, I thought that's actually something I've probably used subconsciously in my career, right? Because what it means is, well, don't be afraid to replicate what others have done and use that in your day-to-day activities. You know, so if something has succeeded for others, should you use it? Absolutely. I think early in my career, I thought, being a leader means you have to have all the answers. It means you can never be wrong, because that would be seen as weakness or a lack of credibility, or create a lack of credibility. And you've got to have all the answers. You could, and everything you do has to be your own idea. Yeah. Whereas now, I've probably just, I don't know, maybe again just a bit older and wise. It's like, well, if you're just replicating, the posh way of saying it, or copying, the true way of saying it, what someone else has done that's worked, what's wrong with that? You're trying to get an outcome, right? And the other thing is the fear of failure is something that I'm very aware of, because that's something that you do. You fail in swimming, not just every week. It's every session. You fail. That's kind of the nature of the training. It's designed to break your body down so that then when you come back for the next session, your body is effectively, very simple terms, is stronger.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I've never really thought about it in that way. But you are, as an athlete, especially as a swimmer, I'm going to put rowing there as well, is you're pushing yourself to the point of failure, that physical exhaustion, and then you get back up and do it again, and then swimming later in the same day.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. And so when you look then at your corporate career now, your professional career, what traits do you think you brought with you from the pool?
So I think I try and look at things again through that lens of, tenacity, sacrifice, and attitude. And I think if I can always just remember that, then that you can apply that to kind of any walk of life, and you can apply that to your career. So I try to do that. I think in terms of business units that I run, teams that I lead, I try and look through the prism of, right, so there's goals and objectives that we have to hit, and look, I'm in a customer facing commercial part of the business, so and generally always have been, so either all or a component of my KPIs are generally around financials, right? So it's around financial performance. Yeah. So again, look, probably not dissimilar to swimming, because it's black and white. You've either hit the number or you haven't. You've either exceeded the number or you haven't. So I guess I have to balance up, the financial performance, the expectations and objectives of our, in my current role, the owners and internal stakeholders and shareholders, our customers, our customer partnerships, and my team, our team, and so you're trying to kind of, and those objectives can be conflicting sometimes. So I try and look at it just through the prism of, okay, let's take a performance approach and an ethics-based approach to everything, and if you can, and those are my anchor words. Yeah. So if every decision you make, you try and put through those, that it's almost like a filter. Yeah. So if it's a tick to both, it's the right decision.
And so anchor words, this is a thing where you talk to me about your use of these anchor words.
Yeah. Right? So again, probably similar to then tenacity and sacrifice and attitude. So again, it's all right. Well, if they're kind of like umbrella words, anchor words to go, right, if it's a tick to all of those, I've probably done the right thing. So I don't have to get into the detail of, but what are the specific activities that I have to do, and what are the specific things I need to say, and what are the specific actions, and what's the specific plan over the coming days, weeks, and months. If every decision I make is under that umbrella, then it's probably the right decision. Doesn't mean you'll get the right outcome. And the swimming example then is when I'm standing behind the block. If I was to think about my race then, well, for a start, it would take too long. Secondly, it confused myself. And thirdly, probably wouldn't have a great outcome. Whereas if I have a couple of anchor words where I go, right, on the first length of 100 metres, so the first 50 of the 100, I need to think about easy speed. So have a good dive into the water and then easy speed. And what that means is you're basically still going as fast as you can, but you're trying to keep your muscles loose. So you're trying to keep your arms and shoulders loose. You're trying to keep your legs, you're not over revving your arms, you're not burning out your legs. And then the second 50 come back hard, and that's where you then bring in your back end speed. So it's just some anchor words so that so rather than thinking about the whole race during the race, I'm just thinking about those 2 or 3 things. Yeah. And I think it's similar in business in those examples I just gave, yeah.
Well, yeah, so, because the thing about swimming is it's an individual race. But what you've done, you've given yourself, I guess, the guiding principles to help you execute it perfectly without overthinking.
Yeah.
In the same way, you're using those anchor words from a business or from a team perspective now. And that's perhaps, to what extent do you think it supports your team in understanding, well, actually, I know what Greg wants. If I'm achieving these 2 values, principles, then I'm on the right track.
I think so, yeah, because I think so again, if I break down the race, and it's what I said earlier, it's about it's the reactions to the dive, it's the dive height, it's the dive angle of entry, it's then the streamline position, etc. So in business, that's like the strategic plan. Yeah. So the strategic plan is, right, well, what are the company values and objectives? What does that then mean to our customers, our stakeholders, our owners, and then what are the activities that we need to do beneath that? So that's the detail part of it. And that's got the specific activities that we need to do and we need to go through. But then on a day-to-day basis, what are the things that can just remind me of kind of all of that in a couple of key words where I go, right, yeah, that's what I need to do in this situation. Yeah. And then, I think it's just possibly how my mind works. I don't know if that's I'm not saying it's the right way. I just think it's a way that probably just keeps me on track without having to, go through reading the strategic plan every day, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a way that has brought you success. And I guess for those watching and listening, to your point, if somebody wants to try and emulate a similar type of success, it's recognizing the use of these value words or principles and how they might support you.
I think so.
When you think then of other swimmers or athletes who are coming through their professional career, their swimming career, and they know it's going to come to an end at some point, using your experience, what guidance would you give them on how to best prepare for their second wind in life?
So I think, one of the things I did, it's hard to say wrong. I don't know because I think I did it for the right reasons. But again, I don't think I leveraged my swimming achievements, if you like, at the time. But again, I think it was for, valid reasons. I didn't want to big note myself. I wanted anything that I achieved, I wanted it to be on merit. I think what I would encourage anyone to do now would be, look, start to try and build your networks. Now, that's probably easier to do now than it would have been in 2002, because in 2002, LinkedIn was probably just becoming a thing. It may not have been.
Not quite.
Was Facebook around? I don't even think Facebook was around. So today it's easy to look. It's easy to look people up. It's easy to reach out to people. So I think if I was having my time again now, I'd probably be reaching out to former swimmers, definitely to swimmers who I knew were in the financial services world, and just saying, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Can can we meet and have a coffee? Yeah. Because I thought at the time, oh, I don't want to ask them for a favour. Mm-hmm. We don't have to, just have a chat. Have a chat, try and understand what it is they do, and you might learn something. You might actually get some valuable valuable intel out of the conversation. So I think reach out to people, try and build your networks, try and inform yourself. So again, I think I probably did a decent job of researching stuff. But again, I think without that kind of networking side, there's only so much you can read. Yeah. In terms of trying to prepare for that next step. Look, I think a big thing is just don't be afraid to fail, because again, as an athlete, you're doing that on a daily basis, which is, I think that's something I've taken with me into my career as well, which is, you know, don't fear failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to be better, to do things in a different way, and it builds resilience. I mean, that principle that, you know, in swimming, you know, without overstating it, you're going through adversity kind of every day. Yeah. So you're going through that failure every day, so that 100 butterfly when you race, yeah, it's going to hurt, but it's probably not going to hurt as much because you've actually prepared yourself.
Yeah.
And I think just that you alluded to earlier, so the preparation that you need to go through as an athlete, you just kind of do it automatically when you're a 12, 13, 14-year-old, because your coach tells you to, your parents tell you to. And then when you get into your working world, you realise, what I was actually doing is I was preparing for something. I was getting myself ready for something, and those are skills that are obviously invaluable when you're in your working life. So I think it's the, you know, keep yourself informed, try and build your networks. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because it doesn't mean you don't have the answers. It just means you're just seeking intel and advice. You know, I think don't feel like you need to know everything from day one in order to land that first opportunity. Because I think that was the other thing I was always very conscious of. It was like, well, they're going to expect the finished article in my first role as a broker and planner. It's like, well, no, you're getting this role because and they know you've just come from uni. Yeah. So
yeah, no, that's really good. And I guess, you know, to conclude your story in many respects, when you're coming back into masters, you know, the lessons that you've given there are certainly for someone who is, I guess, leaving that first career in many respects and looking to get into a more traditional marketplace. For you exited swimming, went into that traditional marketplace while staying in the traditional workforce. You then went back in at a master's level, achieved success at a master's level. I should let you say, as humble as you are, what did you achieve in master's swimming?
So I won nationals that year I came back, whatever that was, 13. I think I've still got a couple of records actually for that age group as well. For
you do.
300 free.
You do, but yeah,
I did
that's
have.
okay.
I haven't I think the most exciting part was when I then transitioned then to the national squad and started going to national events, and that was where I was reunited with my coach from Portsmouth, who at the time was coaching for a Gold Coast team. He's now the head coach at Carlisle, but we missed each other. So I'd already left by the time he took that post, and just had about 4 or 5 years of competing at national level again in this country, which was fantastic. So that kind of almost like finger in the air goal of I'm going to try and get back to my times of 10 years ago, then started to become like an actual possibility. And I got close. I didn't quite get there, but I got to within 0.6 of my 50 butterfly time. So so they were right. So
and what was the driving force for you to transition out of that nationals or that masters level
into the
recreational swimming? Coming from national into and saying maybe my time's done again.
Yeah, it's probably COVID actually. So
you can say family. It just changed the whole thing.
In that first year of the swimming comeback, my wife was pregnant with my first, with my eldest. And when he was born, my daughter was then born 19 months after. So I then, the goal then became, I've got to keep this up because I want them to see me swim. And then our third was born a couple of years later. So I thought, I've got to keep this up because I want him to see me swim. So I just thought, what a great example I can set. If they can see me doing something as their dad, it's going to be a great example for them. So I would have kept going until about 2019. And then through a combination of, I think by 2019 we had 1 in daycare and 2 at school, or 2 in daycare and 1 at school, or something. So what had previously been doable, which was, well, when we were no kids, it was easy to get to training. Then when we had 1 kid, but everyone was on mat leave, that was okay. then when we had one kid, Erin was back at work, that was still okay because I would take my son to daycare on the way to work, and daycare was right near the office. That was fine. Even with 2, it was fine. Even with 3, it was okay. It was when it got to kids in different locations, that's when the training started to wane. And then COVID hit. So it was waning before COVID, but yeah.
But I think it's great because typically it's, as athletes, it's your own physical ability that starts to tell you, okay, my time's done. I think what's great for your story here when it's masters, it's actually, no, hold on, there's all these kids all over the place. This isn't just my physical, this isn't my decision anymore, but those priorities shift. But I think what is great, and thanks for coming in and sharing that journey, because it really does emphasize, as I listen to you, that what you got from sport was that excitement, that need to put yourself right onto that pressure point for that spectacle to really happen. And so for you throughout your career, your professional career, you found it again, be it in boxing, be it football, be it getting back into masters swimming. And I think now, in sort of leadership, still looking for those positions. But I also like the sort of principles or anchor words that you use, which not only guided you to elite performance as an athlete, but are certainly helping you and your team to continue to perform now. And, coupled with this humility and this sort of commercial approach is, again, probably very similar to your dad in terms of being in that office and being respected and moving things forward.
Yeah, look, and probably one big thing, and sorry to your point around athletes transitioning, and this is a really big one, and it's I found this in multiple aspects of my life, but it's putting yourself in that environment, which as an athlete you'll probably do all the time. Is putting yourself in that environment where you're surrounded by quote unquote good people, or people that are better than you, whether it's at swimming or whether it's in business or whatever. And so for me, that moment was going to Hawaii. Well, firstly North Carolina and then Hawaii, because I'd gone from being I'm not going to say a big fish in a small pond, because the club I trained with was an elite club, but you go to University of Hawaii, for example, and everyone there is national champion in their own country, and they're from multiple countries all over the world. Everyone is, people are going to Olympics, Commonwealths, and everything. So the first sort of challenge is you've got to keep up and not embarrass yourself. And then it's like, okay, then chipping away to go, right, how do I now not just keep up, but be a leader in this team and stand out, So I had to try and have that mindset in North Carolina, in University of Hawaii, and then in business as well. So I think anyone coming in, leaving their career and going into their working career, try and get yourself in that environment where you are out of your comfort zone, because it's going to build resilience. It's going to really teach you about yourself, and then call upon the memories that you had as an athlete. Because they are relevant and they're transferable memories and skills, I think. And so I've always tried to do that. And so to your point around the mentoring and the networking, where possible, I try and do it in my day job. And I'm happy to say to teams, I don't want or need to be the smartest person in the room. Don't want to be. I want to have people around me who are going to teach me things and from whom I can learn. I wouldn't have had that mindset when I was first in the working world, because I'd be like, you couldn't say that. You can't, you surely need to be the smartest person in the room, don't you? Because if not, you'll lose credibility. Well, I've got no issues with not being the smartest person in the room, which is good actually, because it's often the case that I'm not. But
there's a lot to learn in those situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, and in the same way that rising tide lifts all ships. So it's put yourself in those environments where you're out of your comfort zone and test yourself, build resilience, and learn. So,
brilliant, Greg. Once again, thank you,
Ryan,
coming in today and sharing your story. Absolutely loved it. Thanks.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Cheers.